effective than other ways of trying to heat up the skin.
Absolutely. It's a tip I've actually given out quite a bit this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we have a call here from Jenny out in sunny Arizona. Jenny, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you.
What question could you possibly have for somebody in New York and Boston about dealing with cold weather in your skin?
Oh, well, actually, I have a problem from the dryness. You were talking about itchy skin. My problem is in my scalp, and it's very itchy and often feels very irritated.
How has this been going on for some time, or has this just started this winter?
No, it's been going on for about a year or so. And I've tried different moisturizing products for my hair, but I don't want to obviously load my scalp up with greasy things.
Got it. And what kind of shampoo do you use?
I use a gentle shampoo and a conditioner.
Okay. All right, Dr. Hirsch, do you want to give Jenny some advice about what to do about her itchy, flaky scalp?
Absolutely. Jenny, did you find that it was reactive to something, or did it just kind of start happening on its own?
No, it just started happening on its own. I stopped coloring my hair, thinking that was contributing to it, and that hasn't helped any. It's not flaky, it's just itchy and tender.
Well, tender is always something I pay attention to, but generally itchy scalp can be a number of things. Most of them are really not very worrisome at all. What we often suggest, I know you mentioned a gentle shampoo, are certain over-the-counter products. There's one ingredient called ketoconazole that is actually really, really helpful to leave on the scalp for a few minutes, and that can address several of the different most likely causes. One point that's worth noting is it is labeled, as many of these products are, as a shampoo, but most of the time these problems actually are originating in the scalp, not in the hair. And what you want to do with really any of the products that you're going to try and use is allow them to have that time to get onto the scalp and penetrate onto the scalp. So I typically like to tell people, when you get into the shower and are trying a medicated shampoo, and ketoconazole is one, salicylic acid is another, where you can find that is T-Sal, the Neutrogena product, and just get it in your scalp, work it in really, really well. Give it a good, 5 to 10 minutes to sit in there before you wash it out, because that's actually where you need to have the impact in order for it to kind of really address the underlying condition.
Yeah, and the other shampoos that I've had good luck with over the years, I mean, even just basic Head and Shoulders, the selenium sulfide kind of shampoos,
sure,
and the tar shampoos like T-Gel by Neutrogena, which smell kind of yucky, but actually have a good anti-inflammatory. So those are reasonable starts. And then the other
tar, because she's in Arizona, so I just always get worried it's the tar, the smarting of
the sun. Yeah. That's
a
good point. I use a fair amount of it here in New York, but that's something to be aware of, that it can cause irritation or inflammation of the scalp. And then the other thing is that there are a number of these topical steroids that are lotions that can help too. I agree. I mean, I usually try to start with the shampoos because that you don't need a prescription for. But if you see a dermatologist for it, they certainly have a number of topical things. Most of them are steroids, which are anti-inflammatory, which can be very effective in terms of treating the flaking and the itching. Have you seen a dermatologist for this, Jenny?
I see a dermatologist, and she suggested a dandruff shampoo that I tried, but it didn't have any impact.
Right.
But I didn't try the leaving it on for 5 minutes thing. I just kind of washed and rinsed it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Dr. Hirsch on this one. What you're trying to do, this is not the hair itself, it's the scalp. And so you want to, if you can get some more penetration there, that's one thing. But if it's not working, you could talk to the dermatologist about, putting on a topical anti-inflammatory. And that is something you could at least try and see if that worked.
Okay. I'll do that at my next appointment. All right. Thank you.
Very good. Jenny, thank you very much for your call. This is the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and I'm on the line with Dr. Ronella Hirsch. And we're talking about dry skin, or not only dry skin, but the things that we tend to see as dermatologists in the wintertime, winter-specific skin conditions. So if you're out there with a skin issue, especially a winter-related one, please give us a call at 1-877-698-3627. That's 1-877-NYU-DOCS. And we have a call from Jackie in Kentucky. Jackie, welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. What can we do for you this evening?
Yeah, I'm calling. I've had for quite a while some irritation on my back, a lot of itching. It's right where my brow line, like where my brow comes across my back. But also, I also have like disc issues there, so I've had pain in that area for many years. And I'm wondering if you would think it would be more of a nerve damage thing, or if it would be just a regular skin condition.
So you have itching on your back where your bra hits, but in that area you've had, some kind of like a disc compression or something? I mean, some other neurological thing in the same area? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
And do you have pain or itching or both?
Both.
Both. Okay, Dr. Hirsch. Oh, go ahead. Dr. Hirsch, do you want to take a stab at this?
The itching is sort of always there, but it's more so when I have, like something that's rubbing against it.
Okay. All right. Dr. Hirsch, do you want to take a crack at this?
Sure. So, hello, lots of reasons that you can, get an itchy back. It's something that we see. We've been talking about dry skin. Eczema can do it. You can have it because of something you're reacting to. Sometimes in bras, they have even like a rubber or a lining that people can react to. And sometimes it's just even, there's this legendary thing in dermatology that it's the part of your back that's just out of your reach that can often be very, very itchy. Do you find that it gets better when you're at home and you're not wearing bras? Is that, do you find that that's actually making it worse?
Yes, the bras do make it much more itchier, yes. And I have bought so many different bras, trying out different ones, and I have found some that are a little better than most, but still,
I was going to
by the end of the day, it's very irritated.
Have you actually tried, not so much in the exact bra category, but even what they now are calling kind of like athleisure, so stuff that you might wear to work out? Because those products tend to be more of like a lycra basis or like a newer material that tends not to have a lot of the things that tend to irritate, because it's the rough contact that often does it. So there are, products at every spectrum of the price point level. You can go find this at Target. You can find them at, really everywhere. But I have found for a lot of people, in addition to just good dry skin care, because often that's a factor, swapping out a bra and putting on something that still gives you the support you want under clothes, but kind of doesn't do quite that same number of irritating and gouging into the back can be very, very helpful also.
Right. Yes, and I have, and they are better, like the sports type bras, they are much better than a regular, out of all the different, I've bought numerous ones, so that does help. But I also had, I haven't been to a dermatologist for it, but I did ask the family doctor, and she thought it was like eczema. She gave me a cream, but that made it even worse. It was even itchier without anything, just putting the cream on itself made it worse, so.
Did she talk to you about just general... Did she talk to you about kind of general care for eczema, like taking shorter showers and, trying to put on moisturizer while you're still damp from the shower? Did you talk about any of that?
No.
Yeah, I think those are all, they're all very basic things to do, but those are all very reasonable things to try, and they're pretty easy. Just make the showers cooler, just like we talked about before, and, try to put on a lotion. Do you have somebody at home that can help you kind of put on a moisturizer or something back in that area?
I don't. I live alone, so I sort of rigged up a little type of thing to do that. But like I say, I started finding that a lot of times the lotions would make it even itch worse, too. So I sort of got away from that. So, but I was just more or less wondering if it would be possible, like the nerve damage, can that be the possibility, or do you think it would be worth going to a dermatologist to have them check it?
I mean, my feeling would be I would see a dermatologist to see, because I mean,
Okay.
you know, nerve damage, I mean, I tend to associate that more with pain, but I mean, you know, itching certainly could be part of that too. But you know, the most common, you know, just under the rubric of common things present commonly, would be just kind of, you know, dry skin or skin that gets a little irritated. Then when you have the bra kind of rubbing, especially up and down, especially if there are metal parts to it, that can actually just make it worse. So again, I think that's probably the most common thing, but it's certainly reasonable to see a dermatologist. And again, I mean, the dermatologist can prescribe, you know, something topical. And you know, there are all kinds of topical things, and there are some that, you know, only have steroid and Vaseline in them, and that you have less of a chance of being sensitized to. So I think it's always worth a try to see somebody. But from what you're saying with the itching, I find that more along the lines of a skin thing than a nerve thing. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that, Dr. Hirsch?
I mean, I think, like you said, there is that sort of non-precision overlap between itch and pain, that sometimes kind of itch is just pain waiting to kind of manifest itself.
Mm-hmm.
So is it within the realm of possibility that if you have specific kind of, you know, nerve pain in that area, that you might have it manifest as itch? Absolutely. Is it more likely that it's probably kind of the dry skin, and that at a minimum is compounding it, and that addressing that probably would bring you some element of relief? Also probably.
Yeah.
So I would say there's it's just such a little thing to make these relatively small adjustments,
right,
and see if that doesn't help you, while still pursuing and seeing if it's really, you know, a pain thing underneath.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
All right, I sure appreciate it.
Okay, Jackie, thank you very much for your call. This is the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and I'm on the line with Dr. Ranella Hirsch. Dr. Hirsch is a board-certified dermatologist, and she is based in Boston, and we are talking about things that tend to occur in the wintertime. So what about things like laser treatments and things like that in the wintertime? Are there good things about doing this in the winter, bad things about doing it in the winter when the skin is dry, but by the same token, you're kind of generally out of the sun? Do you have things that you recommend to your patients in terms of various procedures, like I said, like specifically laser treatments?
Yeah, this is actually a very busy time of year for us, and in particular, people will laugh when I say this, we see patients often the week before Thanksgiving and the week before Christmas, and those are some of our very busiest weeks of the year because people have that time off, and so we can actually do more aggressive interventions, and they can go home and have the time to heal. But we actually love to treat with lasers this time of the year. Often, you know, you're wearing clothes, which is just very helpful. I mean, the impetus on being crazy about sun protection, you're not really running out to the beach.
Right.
So, yes, this is a very, very busy laser treatment time of year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's my feeling too, and a lot of people, you know, you sort of recommend oftentimes if they come to see you in you know, July, August, why don't you wait until the fall, because you want to be sure that you keep this out. For most things, you want to keep it out of the sun. Look, as a dermatologist, you're not going to tell anyone to go get sun for pretty much anything, but especially after some kind of a laser treatment, and even before a laser treatment, because it allows you to be more aggressive in most of your laser treatments that you use if the skin is as unpigmented as possible. So I agree. This is oftentimes a good time of year to do these laser treatments, not only because staying out of the sun, but like you said, because you have some time off. So it doesn't matter if you look a little bit hinky for a few days after some kind of a laser procedure. All right, well, listen, we are going to take a break for a few minutes, but if you are out there with skin questions, please either call in or stay on the line. We're going to have Dr. Hirsch is going to be able to stay with us for another half an hour, and so if you have specific questions about winter skin care, please think about them. Give us a call at 1-877-NYU-DOCS, 877-698-3627, and we're going to take a break for a few minutes.
Never miss a beat of Dr. Radio with the new SiriusXM app.
Dr. Radio.
Streaming now included with most SiriusXM subscriptions. Go to SiriusXM.com/more.
You know her name. 15-time Grammy Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, producer, actress.
Yes, Sean, this is Alicia Keys.
Alicia Keys' radio comes to SiriusXM. Her soul-stirring R&B hits. Her exclusive SiriusXM Small Stage Series performance at Harlem's world-famous Apollo Theater. And much more. Alicia Keys Radio. For a limited time starting tomorrow on Channel 48 and through January 6th on the SXM app.
Friday on Dr. Radio at 6 a.m. East. Can repetitive hits to the head cause stroke? Dr. Todd Berland looks at a new NFL-funded study that suggests a link between multiple concussions and stroke. At 8 a.m., Dr. Shankin and Evans discuss early childhood sleep and how that impacts child development. Then at noon East, registered dietitian Samantha Heller examines the science of food preparation. Learn how physics, biology, and chemistry affect what we eat and how we make it. That's just some of what's happening Friday on SiriusXM Dr. Radio.
Okay, here we go.
Immerse yourself in the world's largest archive of America's original jam band. Hear exclusive insight from the Grateful Dead.
We were working on that record. It was really incredible.
Full live concerts.
The finest band in the land, the Grateful Dead.
Dedicated talk shows.
Bob Weir, say hello to the people. Hiya, kids. Hiya, hiya.
And more. The Dead live on the Grateful Dead Channel 23 and streaming on your phone or at home on connected devices and speakers.
This is an important message from the CDC on managing stress. Common signs of stress and anxiety include feelings of fear, anger, sadness, numbness, or frustration. Also, changes in appetite or energy levels, as well as difficulty concentrating or sleeping, may be signs of emotional distress. These feelings are very real, and treatments can help. Reach out to your doctor to learn more about the confidential resources and therapies available to help.
Bringing the warmth and wonder of the season with timeless Christmas music and carols.
Hallmark Channel Radio returns to SiriusXM.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Beloved Hallmark Channel stars like me, Candace Cameron Bure, will share their favorite holiday songs and behind-the-scenes stories of their all-new original holiday movie premieres. On now.
Through Christmas Day, Channel 104, and on the SXM app.
I'm Dr. Mark Siegel, Medical Director of Dr. Radio. I want to caution everyone out there, even if you've had your COVID vaccine, which you should have had by now, you must also get your flu vaccine. The viruses are totally different. You're not going to see protection against the flu because you had the COVID vaccine, and you're likely not going to see protection against COVID because you get the flu vaccine. Get both, please. SiriusXM. We keep you healthy and safe here on Dr. Radio.
Recognizing the efforts of the healthcare workers and researchers helping us through this coronavirus pandemic, this is Dr. Radio, Sirius XM 110.
Welcome back to the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and we are still have on the line with us Dr. Ranella Hirsch. Dr. Hirsch is a board-certified dermatologist specializing in cosmetic and laser dermatology in Boston, Massachusetts, and has a private practice in Boston. So welcome back to the program, Dr. Hirsch.
Thank you so much for having me.
And this evening we're talking about things that we're seeing on the skin in the wintertime. So if you are out there with especially a wintertime skin issue, please give us a call at 1-877-698-3627. That's 1-877-NYU-DOCS. We have an email from Lauren here in New York, which is, I have oily skin in the summer. My skin is still oily, but I'm noticing dry patches on my face and on different areas of the body now. What type of face and body cream should I use? Which is an interesting question, because oftentimes people that do have inherently oily skin, you know, they have their oily skin in the wintertime too, but now they have these dry patches, and so you have areas that are oily and things that are dry. How do you approach somebody like that in terms of recommending a treatment?
So, depending on kind of how the extreme of either one is, I kind of go one of two roads, and we'll usually talk about it just to see what is the preferred option. Number one is divide and conquer. You know, if you have parts of the face that are dry, parts of the face are oily, address them each way. You know, don't put heavier things on the oily parts and reserve them for the dry and what have you. What has really happened recently, and I think is so interesting, is there's really been, in terms of products and textures. A lot of new, almost like hybrid kind of products. You know, I used to always have my same speech of kind of, you know, cream, lotion, you know, gel, ointment, etc., and kind of going further down that pathway the drier you were and matching them up. And what there are now are a lot of these gel cream products that do a very nice job of hydrating but don't tend to have that underlying heavy greasiness that people with oily skin find. So I have no financial interest, but one of my very favorites is that new Neutrogena Hydro Boost line, which is a drugstore, easily accessible, not particularly expensive at all. It's really a lovely product. A couple of others there's no financial interest in any of them. Summer Fridays is a really nice product. Their Cloud Dew. Oh So Simple from Crave Beauty is a nice one. And the new Aveeno line of calming essentials, which is, I want to say, maybe $10 or $11. It's a very good value. You can find everywhere. That's at every drugstore, every Walmart. And any of those are really good options that, you know, do a nice job in terms of getting you moisturized, but don't really tip you over that oily edge in my experience.
Right. Okay. Well, those are all good ideas, good suggestions. And then the other thing that we'll sometimes see is, in addition to sort of these things about, you know, skin dryness and things, are skin diseases like psoriasis and eczema. What are you, I mean, in general, what has your observation been about some of these things like, you know, psoriasis, eczema, things like that, skin diseases, in terms of what happens in the wintertime, and how do you approach treating them?
Yeah, I mean, we do definitely have to ratchet up some of these things in the winter, and some of it is environmental, right? Like, people with psoriasis tend to actually benefit from UV light. It's actually one of the forms of treatment that we offer. So there are patients where there will be a referral to consider light-based therapies. Now there are some more options in a portable setting at home. Sometimes if you're in an academic environment, a medical center, they might have something you can use. But often it's just compensating for what they don't have. There was a famous story of a couple where she had sarcoid and he had psoriasis, and they were kind of in this very difficult place of where to live because, as you probably know, one is greatly made worse by cold and one is greatly made worse by hot, and they would kind of shuffle back and forth. But yeah, so it's really about trying to kind of replace and help them to, again, not make it worse and maybe restore what might be missing in the seasonal change.
Yeah, I mean, the psoriasis is one of the things that you really do tend to see. You know, I mean, in part, like you said, it responds to ultraviolet light, and they would, you know, need a more aggressive kind of therapy, and whether it's an oral medicine or, like you said, light-based therapy. You know, just kind of make up for the lack of the light, and the so-called narrowband UVB we have in our office, which works very well, and oftentimes academic medical centers have it. And you're right. You know, it's the kind of thing to be aware of that if you know it's going to work for you, people can get a home unit. If they have, you know, Manhattan apartments probably are not great places for it, but if you have room to place either a panel of lights or an ultraviolet light source, that can be very effective in terms of treating a number of skin diseases like psoriasis, like eczema too. We've had, you know, a lot of success over the years.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that comes up oftentimes is sunscreen. And so we, you know, listen, I think we dermatologists sound like a broken record. But I think in the wintertime, what do you recommend to people in terms of sunscreen use? Because oftentimes people feel like, you know, it's cold and things like that, I don't have to use it.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you kind of covered it right. It's not really about weather. I think that's one of the great confounders that confuses people because people kind of think, oh, it's not hot, therefore there's no sun. Wrong answer. Turns out, actually, if there's light outside, there's sun outside. And, you know, even things like a cloudy day, we know that UV and clouds goes right through. So it's not something that's protecting you either. I really actually have less relied on those kinds of things and really started moving people to the UV index, which is this kind of fantastic, I don't know what you call it, this fantastic kind of numerical system that's put out by the Weather Service, where they take into account not just weather, but also geography, altitude, and everything in real time, and actually assign a grade from 0 up to 13, where they will actually tell you just how potent the UV index is in that particular time and place. You can access it on basically any weather app. It's not on the first screen, but on your baseline Apple app or your baseline Android app. Just scroll down to the bottom, and UV index is right there, third from the bottom, and you get a numerical number. And what those translate into is a very specific set of, this is the amount of time that you have before X can kind of impact you. This is what it is. So I find that that's a much more reliable thing. And then the one additional thing I would always throw out there, because I myself am a skier, I think people often lose sight of the fact that skiing and being involved in winter sports is actually a really fantastic way to get a really terrible sunburn. People are always surprised when I say that some of the very worst sunburns I've ever seen have been in skiers because, right, it's the double whammy. Not only are you getting direct sunlight at a higher altitude, of course, because, skiing's in a mountain, you're also getting that reflection of the UV light off of the snow. And as a consequence, people can get horrible, horrible sunburns when you're in some of these areas where you're seeing a lot of skiing. So definitely something that I encourage people to be aware of, think about. And again, the UV index is such a fantastic tool.
Yeah, and I would just, my personal, sort of experience in stupidity, one of the worst sunburns I ever had in my life when I was in Southern California, but I was up skiing in the San Bernardino Mountains without a pair of sunglasses, and I had the worst sunburn on my eyes, on my sclera, that was just incredibly painful and you went to the ER and they put in anesthetic and things, but I mean, it was just beet red and horribly painful, and learned a valuable lesson about the reflectivity of snow in terms of reflecting the light just back there, and you just have to be very aware of it.
That just sounds horrible, actually.
Oh yeah, no, it was when I was a child. I think I was scarred for life. Probably why I went into dermatology, but it was bad. So anyway, okay, but I think that's the bottom line. I mean, we still have to be very aware of the fact that even though it's cold and things like that, there is a lot of sun that's still out there. We still have to be aware of the fact that it can still be damaging. What about other skin treatments that people do, like exfoliation and things like that? People oftentimes like to exfoliate their skin. I mean, which is a nice thing to do. It kind of gets rid of the dead skin and things like that. But at a time when the skin may be a little bit more irritable, do you change your recommendation in terms of people doing exfoliations, or have them change what they do? Do you modify that at all during the wintertime?
Well, I think one of the very first things that I think I try to get across is this very out there perception that people have that any flaking is automatically something to exfoliate. To a dermatologist, it's really not the case. To us, we think very much flaking. No, you need to moisturize. You actually want to restore moisture. And believe it or not, that's actually, in my experience, the opposite perception a lot of people have out there. They assume that it means exfoliate more. And that's just really a bad way to kind of go, because you see people with these very aggressively, exfoliated skins. Their skin barriers are not in great shape. I actually, on social media once, to try and explain this, I have little children, so they took the Duplos and they made like a 3D model of the stratum corneum, and I was trying to make the point that I will post it to my Instagram, because it's actually, every time I post it every winter, it's some of people go, oh my goodness, that makes such sense. And it's basically to try and make the point that, yes, absolutely, there is a natural process over 28 days in your stratum corneum where the cells are evolving. There's about 14 days when it starts at the bottom. The basal layer works its way up. There's a period in that 14 days where it loses its nuclei, and people start to think, oh, it's dead skin. Oh, I should, And in fact, yes, it is enucleated. There's no nucleus there, which is why I think the term dead goes. But that dead skin is actually performing a critical and vital function. That is your body's gatekeeper. That is your skin barrier. It's keeping kind of the good stuff in and the bad stuff out.
Right.
And what you want to do is gently kind of get rid of some of the loose dead skin, sure. But what you don't want to do is kind of go to town and tear to pieces your skin barrier, which is what inadvertently so often tends to be the case. And then you just spend this enormous amount of time chasing it and trying to just repair a barrier to get it back to baseline.
Interesting. So, do you I mean, if somebody wants to do exfoliation, do you advise them to do less of it, or just do it and be aware of the fact that you want to sort of moisturize your skin, perhaps more aggressively than you would during the summertime?
Absolutely. So I think I would approach it slightly differently, face and body. In both cases, though, I think a lot of times we always kind of have this kind of idea in our head what exfoliation is. And I think people forget that exfoliation can come in a lot of different flavors. So for the body, just even switching, if you wanted one or a couple days a week, to a product that's a moisturizer but might have something gentle like a lactic acid in it, like an amlactin, does a wonderful job and does a whole lot less of the stripping. You can certainly put something on in the shower, in a cleanser, that very gently exfoliates, but it's a wash-up product. It's not going to stay on there and cause kind of increasing abilities to damage and hurt over time. So there's that. And then for the face, if someone really did want to, maybe don't go for the classic sort of mechanical. Well, I should probably step back. There's, as we know, there's three kinds of exfoliating. There's kind of physical exfoliation, chemical exfoliation, and the sort of subcategory of enzymatic exfoliation. And within physical exfoliation, I tend to shy away from it when your skin is really in that tough winter time, but gentler chemical exfoliation with things like polyhydroxy acids, lactic acid, as we said, are wonderful options. Also, enzymatic exfoliation is fantastic, very gentle, very good way to do it, and really achieve the desired outcome, but do it in a way that's just so much more gentle than what we might be used to doing.
Right. And then, one of the other things that comes up is, and we've talked about it a little bit, about people exercising in the wintertime, and especially in cold environments. You said you're a skier, and, one of the other things that is actually potentially very serious is damage from cold that can occur, especially if you're outdoors running or you're skiing and things like that. In terms of trying to avoid things like frostbite, which can be quite serious. Now, when you're going out skiing, what do you do? And when patients talk to you about exercising or any kind of sporting activity outdoors this time of year, what do you advise them, and do you change your advice based on sort of the ambient temperature and the wind chill, the wind coming through and things like that?
Absolutely, and I would add to that ambient humidity as well, because I think those are both really critical. These are, I think, things that most ski-type folks, snowboarders, any winter sports people hear over and over again, really to make layering choices where you can really try and kind of keep yourself protected by using some of the modern technologies and materials, making sure that you have materials that can tolerate getting wet and aren't going to kind of leave you there. You get a lot of lessons on that. Keeping, as we say, multiple layers that you can peel on and off as you go through the course of the day, covering the skin. I've learned from, it's very interesting, I've actually learned from ski instructors over the years. That's one thing that a lot of them have taught me, that they will take sun protective creams and things and just put them on as barriers on their face all the way. And I think that that's brilliant, because it's really not even just serving as a sun protectant, but also just as a physical barrier. Especially things like a stem, which are so easy to reapply kind of in the wild, if you will.
Yeah, and I'm not a skier, I'm a runner, and that's something that I have done, when you're out there on those really cold days, is just use even a heavy moisturizer like an Aquaphor or something, and just put a layer of that on the skin, which can help protect. And, obviously all the same things that you said in terms of layering and having sort of multiple layers, so you have those extra layers of air in between the garment, making sure that you have a pair of gloves or something else that's appropriate for the temperature. But oftentimes just putting a layer of some kind of very heavy moisturizer on the exposed skin to try to minimize its exposure to the cold and the wind.
Agreed.
So anyway, we are, I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and I am on the phone with Dr. Ranella Hirsch, and we are talking about strategies that we can utilize to get our skin through the winter and the sorts of things that we see in winter skin. Now, I have never, fortunately, because of where I've lived, I've never really had frostbite, but it is something that can happen to skiers and things. Have you ever had that, or do you have patients that come in with elements of what they would call frostbite?
So I have not seen much in the way of frostbite clinically in practice. I live in a big, to be fair, I live like you in a big city with lots and lots of academic medical centers. So frostbite tends to be the thing that, might be seen by an ED or an urgent care more than I think a practicing derm office. But
the thing that people talk about is the fact that these things, you get kind of cold and then it gets numb. I mean, you don't feel it at all, and that's oftentimes when you start to worry about that the tissue really is getting frozen. You oftentimes will hear about it more from people kind of in the upper Midwest, like in Chicago and Montana and places like that, where they are exposed, and especially in this upper Midwest, and especially if somebody goes out. I mean, the classic thing you see is somebody has a bit too much alcohol. The alcohol basically causes the blood vessels to dilate. They kind of pass out, and they can get actually fairly severely frostbitten. So, I mean, one good suggestion is don't get drunk and fall asleep in the snow. But in terms of wearing appropriate clothing. When you're running, I mean, there are people that like to run in shorts, but in the wintertime, I mean, I think you have to be cognizant of the fact that you really do have to protect your skin. You have to have layers around it.
Agreed.
And again, I think that what we initially, when people are seeing this kind of frostbite, initially it can get to be painful and red and things like that. But it's when it really gets to be numb that you start to worry, and that may, like you said, it probably deserves a visit to the emergency room in terms of, because you want to gently rewarm it and things like that. Things that most practicing dermatologists. Just don't deal with. At least I don't on a regular basis here. Our producer has been typing to me about if you go out in the cold without properly being dressed over many, many years, will that cause early wrinkles or aging of the skin? That's one I hadn't heard before. So going out in the cold without proper insulation causing early wrinkles. I haven't heard of that. I don't know. Have you heard of that or seen that in your practice, Dr. Hirsch?
I've not. I'm trying to think kind of teleologically what that might be. I wonder if it's maybe even an element of just lost hydration. If you just dry out almost because of just water loss and stuff. I don't know that I think it would be permanent, because now I'm thinking, fad and I give up.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I think that the thing that we do know is that there are several things that obviously cause wrinkling. One of them is, the deeper furrows in the skin is due to the loss of collagen and bone that goes on, and teeth, that sort of we all get as we get older, and that oftentimes we correct with things like these fillers, like Juvederm and Restylane and Sculptra and things like that. But a lot of the finer wrinkling, as well as the other aging changes of the skin, really is due to sun damage. And again, I think it's worth repeating that again and again. I mean, the early study, the one of the best was actually done by Al Klickman, the now deceased but famous scientist, dermatologist at Penn, who did studies where he looked at the texture of skin and did biopsies on cheeks, which are sun-exposed, and buttocks, which are not sun-exposed, from Caucasians and African Americans, people that have pigment in the skin. And so they are somewhat protected from the sun penetrating into it, and found that a lot of the aging changes that we see are indeed due to sun exposure. And so therefore, the more you can do, even in the wintertime, to be good about sunscreen and sun protective clothing, which again we certainly we've come a long way in terms of having that, can prevent a lot of these aging changes.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in general, then, what do you do for your skincare regimen in the wintertime? Just very basically, what kinds of things do you do?
Yeah, so, I mean, I always try to explain to people that when you have ingredients that are working for you in terms of actives, in terms of the things that are doing the heavy lifting, like a retinoid or, an antioxidant or what have you, that's not what, despite all the marketing, despite everything you see in commercials and on social media, that's not what you need to change up every season. What you really need to change up is really what we call the vehicle. And I explain it to patients this way. I'm in Boston, my family's in New York. Sometimes when I go to New York to do interviews and things, I'm wearing, fancy shoes, hop on a plane, on a shuttle, get there, come back, don't want to spend a lot of time. If I'm meeting with colleagues or I have a research meeting, I might want to take the train because I might want some time to work on my laptop. And then sometimes I'm taking, my small children and the endless apparatus that comes with small children to visit my family, I might drive. And in each of those cases, I get to New York. The only thing that has changed is the vehicle.
Right.
And skincare and its delivery is exactly the same, really. That if you have a product that you really like, and in the summertime, you might use a gel version of it. Mm-hmm. Well, as we get into fall, maybe transfer over to a lotion. And in the winter, maybe it's really time to keep that same active ingredient, but look at something more hydrating like an ointment or a cream formula. Mm-hmm. And that's really the kinds of tweaks that I do and that I encourage other people to do. So for me, I like to keep it really simple. Gentle cleanser. If I'm wearing makeup, I might use a balm to just get the makeup off. Gentle cleanser. I like to do some form of hydrating. That can be something you purchase, like a fancy spritz. Can also be tap water. And then I like to put on, in the morning, my moisturizer and SPF. In the evening, on a clean, dry face, I like to put my actives. That's pretty much the whole thing.
I'm sorry. Really in the evenings, you put on your what? I'm sorry.
My active ingredients. So in my case, twice a week it's a retinoid, and other nights it's usually some sort of either antioxidant serum or something else. I have pretty dry, sensitive skin, so even after now a couple of years of working on a retinoid, I'm quite steady state at about 2-3 times a week. That's all I can do.
Got it. Okay, well, that's going to do it for us this evening, but I wanted to thank Dr. Hirsch for joining us once again and informing us in terms of her personal approach and her approach as a doctor to dealing with wintertime skin. Dr. Hirsch, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
We're going to take a break for a few minutes. We're going to come back and talk about skin things to do when we're traveling, so please stay with us.
Channels for every occasion on the SXM app. Set the season off with Rockin' Christmas. Make your holiday parties a hit with Jolly Christmas. Or share a silent night with Holiday Chill Out. Explore more than 15 holiday music channels exclusively on the SXM app.
Vital Signs, a podcast by SiriusXM and NYU Langone Health is back with bonus episodes. Follow-up visit, parts 1 and 2. Catch up with all our featured doctors from season 1 and hear how the COVID-19 pandemic has changed healthcare as we know it.
I started to think of how psychedelics could be used to help frontline healthcare workers who are experiencing this kind of existential distress.
The Vital Signs follow-up visit, parts 1 and 2. Listen on the SXM app, free for most subscribers. Download it now.
The 2000s are back. And so are JT, Beyonce, Usher, and Rihanna. Along with the rest of the pop hits that shaped the sound of the new millennium. Let's get it started. SiriusXM's Pop 2K, a non-stop commercial-free flashback to the era of boy bands, flip phones, and MP3s. On Channel 10, or download the SiriusXM app to listen outside the car.
Goodbye.
This is an important message from the CDC about coronavirus. Listen to and follow the directions of your state and local authorities. If you feel sick, stay home. Do not go to work. If your children are sick, keep them at home. If someone in your household has tested positive for the coronavirus, keep the entire household at home. Do not go to work. In all cases, contact your medical provider. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information from the CDC. That's coronavirus.gov.
Sirius SiriusXM is the home for the best in podcasts, including LeVar Burton Reads with actor, director, educator LeVar Burton.
People have asked me for years, when are you going to do content for adults? But I also get asked to read. A bucket list item for a lot of millennials is to have LeVar Burton read them a bedtime story.
LeVar Burton Reads is available now on the SXM app. Free for most subscribers. Just download it today and tap podcasts.
Coronavirus. What you need to know now.
We do need, as we're scaling up vaccination for COVID and doing boosters and getting more people primarily vaccinated for COVID, roll up your sleeves and get your flu shot as well. There is great concern that if we don't take the mitigation strategies that we need for flu as well, that flu could be a challenge for our healthcare infrastructure in the fall and winter.
Hear the latest updates about COVID-19 on SiriusXM Doctor Radio.
Recognizing the efforts of the healthcare workers and researchers helping us through this coronavirus pandemic. This is Dr. Radio, Sirius XM 110.
You're listening to Dermatology with Dr. Michael Whitlow on Doctor Radio.
Welcome back to the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and it's a pleasure to be joined in this half hour by Dr. Kimberly Jordan. Dr. Jordan is a board-certified dermatologist and fellowship-trained cosmetic and laser surgeon with Integris. She specializes in skin of color, skin cancer, and general dermatology. And this evening we're going to be talking about skin care that we have to worry about, or at least think about, when we're traveling, which is a rather large topic. But Dr. Jordan, welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. I guess there's two ways of approaching it, well, many ways of approaching it. One of them is kind of skin care when we travel in general, and I think that the other one is skin care when you travel in the era of COVID, which has a whole different set of, additional set of issues. So, let's start there. Actually, my wife and I were just in Bonaire scuba diving for 2 weeks. We got back Saturday night, and it was great being there because I didn't wear a mask for the entire 2 weeks. And then going down there and also coming back, getting on the plane, you slap on a mask and it's on there for 5 hours, which is a long time to have that thing on, especially not having worn it. So what are the issues that you're seeing, or are you seeing them, when people travel for these longer periods of time with the masks on?
I totally agree with you with, slapping something on your face and having to keep the mask on the whole time. It really can lead to what we call occlusive acne. And so that's what I worry about, and I see a lot with my patients that travel quite a bit. So when that's the case, and we saw this in the beginning of COVID too, we really just want to focus on, the basics of acne. I, try to introduce patients to maybe a wash, like a benzoyl peroxide wash that will treat the acne a bit better. And then also I try to have them equipped with products to treat the acne. So a clindamycin lotion might be a better lotion that's a bit medicated that can help treat your acne, but also help, hydrate the face a little bit. And then if you find like the pimples are kind of hanging around even with using those other products, you could use a retinoid like tretinoin, and that can, or even different over the counter. That's a great one that's available, and you can just get more cell turnover so you don't get these clogged pores. But I think the brunt of what we call maskne is just everything's being occluded under the masks.
Yeah, no, my wife always says it's like walking around in a terrarium. You've got this incredible occlusive, moist environment there that can cause all kinds of problems. So do you recommend that if people are going to be traveling, that they apply this underneath their mask? Do you recommend that they wait until there starts to be a breakout to put it on? How do you approach when to apply this, whether to do it prophylactically before you put the mask on for the long flight, or only if you start to see the acne break out?
I think every patient is different. I tell my patients, I'm like, look, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. So try to stick with your same routine while you're traveling. If you break out, great. Like we've talked about it, we do have your prescriptions on hand, then I would recommend applying it. And then next time you fly, you know that maybe that 4-hour flight wasn't the best, but maybe you don't need it for a 1-hour flight. So every patient's different. I can't, predict what everybody's skin will do, but I do want to have them equipped with the tools to treat themselves.
Something to have there. And then, are there particular masks that you have found that are more or less likely, whether it's a paper mask or some of these cloth or synthetic masks? There's one that's made by Under Armour that I wear quite a bit, but on flights, sometimes people, a somewhat maybe less occlusive mask, like the traditional paper mask that surgeons wear, versus cloth masks. Have you had more or less in the way of problems with a certain make of mask or a certain kind of mask, the fabric that it's made out of? Have you seen that?
Well, the recommendation for if you have mask acne is to use a silk mask. They say those tend to be a little bit more gentler on the skin. They tend not to irritate as much and let your skin breathe a little bit better. And you really have to go hunting, I think, for a silk mask, because I think now we're in the era where people are like, oh, shoot, do you have a mask on you that I can borrow? And most people have a box of masks in their car. So I wish there was, for those planning ahead, a silk mask is going to be your best bet. Maybe just stock up on those. But, we're kind of at the point where we try to hide masks in every pocket we have just so we don't forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you've seen maskne, as we call it, has it generally been in people that have had a previous issue with acne and this exacerbates it, or is it oftentimes people that really didn't have much in the way of acne before, and this sort of brings it on de novo?
I think many patients, especially my female patients, probably had a component of hormonal acne, and the mask acne was, they kind of blamed it on having the masks. So I think I'm seeing a lot of that. I actually own my own clinic now, Jordan Dermatology, so I'm seeing a lot of that. And I also see a lot of something called seborrheic dermatitis. So, and it's not necessarily acne, it's more like a little overgrowth of yeast on the skin, so you can get this red area and peeling around the nares of the nose, or even if you're in men, they get it pretty robust in the mustache and beard area. So I'm actually seeing quite a bit of that as well. It's just the moisture haven under that mask, and it can breed right there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Those are the two things that I've seen by and large are the acne, and the acne is individual pimples, which are individual bumps by and large, and then the seborrheic dermatitis, which is the kind of more diffuse, red, flaky, itchy kind of thing. And I have seen that flare up underneath the mask also. In terms of treatment for it, the acne, as you said, I mean, there are a number of good over-the-counter products like, Differin, which is a retinoid, and the benzoyl peroxide products. And obviously, if you go to see a dermatologist, they have many more, options that are available, but those are oftentimes good ones to start with. For the seborrheic dermatitis, there is, you can get a 1% hydrocortisone cream, which oftentimes is effective, that you can rub on there. And again, if you see a dermatologist, you can certainly get other options, somewhat stronger steroids that you can put on there. But I agree with you, that is the other thing that I've seen underneath the mask when people travel.
Correct, and I think it's confusing for some of my patients because they see, and I believe you guys were talking about this in the earlier segment, but the patients see flaky skin and they think, oh my gosh, I need to put more oils or moistures on, and they're just feeding the yeast. So yeah, you just need a little bit more cell turnover.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think that it's, if there is something like this that comes up, I mean, you certainly can try the over-the-counter things, but especially if it's not responding, it's probably worth a visit to the dermatologist to make a specific diagnosis, because again, you can have these red spots on the face that can be different things, and it's probably best to try to find out, which one of the it is, and address that one or two of them, I mean, whatever it is specifically.
Correct, yeah.
So, anyway, just to let everybody know, I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and I'm on the line with Dr. Kimberly Jordan, and we are talking about things to do to help the skin when we travel. And so if you're out there with a skin travel question, please give us a call at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. And in terms of the skin when you travel too, it's I guess it almost goes without saying, but I think it's worth repeating that it's worth looking at a travel app and seeing what's the temperature going to be like where you're going. So depending on if you're going to Southern California or Arizona from a place like New York or Boston or Chicago, generally it's going to be warmer. But I mean, there are enough of these apps out there that have the temperature that it's worth looking at to see what you're going to be going into. Are you going from like 35 degree temperatures to like 77 degree temperatures? And, then try to dress accordingly. And also in terms of if you're going to a sunnier climate, just be more aware of sunscreens that you're going to use, sun protective clothing that you're going to use. If you're going to be going to the Caribbean or to Mexico and things like that, it's important to know kind of where you're going in terms of planning. Do you advise your patients to kind of, sort of say, let's take a look and see where you're going exactly?
I think everyone would laugh that I was asked to talk about traveling and skincare because I'm the queen of overpacking because I would rather be prepared than not prepared. I've just seen it all so much. But yes, the biggest thing you can do is plan ahead. It's not the time to change up your skincare routine and just use the samples you've had available. Try to keep what you've had so you don't get these skin breakouts while you're not at home and can't see your doctor or what have you. But yeah, keep your same routine, plan ahead. Not sure if you're a luggage checker, but try to see if your skincare comes in travel size containers. Right. If not, my mother is the queen of keeping her contact lens cases, and she puts her like eye cream in them and her retinoid on one side, and I just think that's genius. So you can always be creative in that way. What else?
Well, no, but I think that's something that's worth emphasizing because again, at least here in New York, you go into a number of stores and they have these little bottles that you can buy that will go through the TSA, go through the screening where you can put it in smaller containers, and so you don't have to bring the whole 8 ounces of whatever it is you're going to bring. Just put a little planning ahead of this is what I'd like to use, this is what I can bring on the plane, and so I'll like you said, either get a travel size or put it in a smaller container.
Yeah, and I think there was a preemptive hip hip hooray this summer when the TSA accidentally published that you can carry full-size sunscreens on the plane, which you cannot now. They have since retracted that. But I remember posting that, and the next day so many people of my followers traveled, and they got it confiscated. But those are just things you need to... Well, they hadn't published that they took it off yet, so I was like, oh, no, but that was their mistake. So just sunscreen's not cheap, so I really think people try to skimp on that, but that's probably one of the most important things, whether, you're going in wintry climate or summer climate. I mean, whatever's exposed does need to be protected from the sun. So, you were exactly right. Try long sleeves when you can with sun protective clothing with at least, I say a UPF 50. That's a protection factor. And then sunglasses, don't forget those. A wide brim hat. There's a San Diego hat company that makes one that you can roll up and put in your bag, and you can find those on all shopping websites too. But yeah, just definitely plan ahead. Traveling, I mean, when you go on a plane, they usually have about 20% less humidity than normal air, so your skin can feel drier and dehydrated when traveling. So that's something to think about too. And also, be mindful if you like the occasional, alcoholic beverage from the bar cart. You may be more dehydrated when traveling. So just hydrate, which a lot of people don't do because they don't want to get up and go to the bathroom during the plane ride. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and again, I think that is one of the reasons that people oftentimes feel lousy after a plane ride is that they are dehydrated, and so it's worth, like you said, especially if you're having a drink on the plane, even be a little bit more aware of trying to get more water in there because the dehydration can certainly make you feel lousy. I mean, long plane flights can make you feel lousy in a whole lot of ways, but the dehydration certainly can add to it, and so it's worth being aware of that, and also just the fact that you're dealing with the humidity that's someplace south of the Sahara Desert when you're up there, and so you really have to be sort of almost overcompensate in terms of your liquid intake.
Yeah. I think a lot of my patients are surprised when I say, hey, you know, in the winter, if you're really feeling dry, try to switch from lotions to creams. So creams are going to be thicker than lotions, and that'll help keep hydration in better. Those are humectants, so they draw in the moisture to your skin. And then you can cover it with what's called occlusives. So those are going to be like your face oils or even Vaseline or Aquaphor to kind of trap everything in and keep that moisture in. So I think a lot of people just slap Vaseline on and think, oh, I'm hydrated. But actually you need to draw moisture into the skin. And that's kind of the theory behind even like hydrating sheet masks or under eye masks, even facial mists. A lot of people do those on plane rides now. There's no shame. They slap those on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we have a call here from Cheryl in Michigan. Cheryl, welcome to the program.
Hello, how are
Hi
you?
There. Good, thank you. Do you have a question here for Dr. Jordan?
Yes, I appreciate her input about the anti-acne masks, and the topicals. I know clindamycin would be okay to use in pregnancy, but what if you're pregnant and have acne and are finding yourself wearing a facial mask frequently?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I just had a baby 3 months ago, so I'm glad you asked. So, yes, so in pregnancy I actually got acne, and I used something called azelaic acid, which is safe in pregnancy. So I would ask your dermatologist about using azelaic acid. That worked for me. That did the trick. That's a great option. And you can't really use a retinoid when you're pregnant as well. So you have to be very careful about cell turnover. I actually tell my patients, you know, an easy way to get that cell turnover monthly is to do dermaplaning with, you know, an esthetician, or if the dermatologist has someone in office that does that, that would be great. Just so you're getting that cell turnover and not clogging those pores. That would be good.
So you basically the azelaic acid and like you said, the clindamycin, that also that is okay in pregnancy also, and that can be helpful. Have you tried anything, Cheryl, to try to control this during your pregnancy?
This is actually for my daughter, and recently her dermatologist put her on a cephalosporin, Keflex.
Okay, oral Keflex.
Yes.
Okay, and has that worked for her?
Well, she just started it really about a week ago.
Okay. All right, so we'll see. It's interesting. I have not done that. I've tried to go with the topicals there, but I guess, you know, cephalosporins are safe during pregnancy, and I guess there's no reason to do it. Have you ever used cephalosporins for acne in pregnancy, Dr. Jordan?
I don't. I actually use a Z-Pack. That ends up being okay. And then I recommend like a glycolic wash as well. That might help. That's pregnancy safe, so you can do that as well. But yeah, I haven't. I mean, Keflex is a great pregnancy safe option. It's not ideal for acne bacteria, but I mean, I've seen some crazy breakouts while women are pregnant, and we're kind of, you know, pulling at strings trying to find a solution that might work for them.
Yeah, no, oftentimes that really is very challenging. I mean, there's one woman in particular I'm thinking of that was during her pregnancy, she was coming in on a regular basis to have her acne injected with intralesional steroids, and this was many, many years ago, because in general her acne was under good control, but at the time there just wasn't much else that we could use or that would work for her, and that sort of got her through her pregnancy, but it was not pleasant for her, but you know, you sort of have to modify things, because obviously the most important thing is the health of the fetus, and the acne, you know, you just do your best with. So,
there's some creative ways to also treat it. I mean, you could do blue light therapy. You could do some laser ND-YAG treatments. You could do weekly treatments like that. It's just, you know, it takes a lot of time from the patient to come in weekly, but those are definitely options too.
That's true. Actually, there are lasers now that do work for the acne, and so that's something else to consider. So,
is it a one-time treatment with a Z-Pack?
That's what I do for my patients to calm it down when they have outbreaks. But
so
Keflex would be. I would finish the Keflex portion though and see how she does there.
Yeah. And then you said once a month dermaplaning would be another option.
I offer that to my patients. I mean, I'm a cosmetic dermatologist, so I mean, my patients are very in tune with like me preaching cell turnover. So if they can't use a retinoid, then the dermaplaning is a great option. And I say that for even my rosacea patients too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
very
Cheryl.
helpful.
Thank you very much for your call. This is the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and I am on the line with Dr. Kimberly Jordan, and we are talking about skin care when we're traveling. And so if you have a question about skin care and traveling, please give us a call at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. You know, one other thing that sometimes comes up is, do you have a little first aid kit that you put together for travel? I know, my wife and I will sometimes put one together and sometimes think, oh, God, we should have done this or we should have done that. And obviously, as a doctor, it's easier to do, although for patients, you can say, listen, I want an oral antibiotic or I want a topical mupirocin as a topical antibiotic, Band-Aids and things like that you can do. I want a topical steroid because I'm going to come into contact with something. Do you have a kind of a first aid kit that you put together, either specifically as a physician or just in general that you would recommend for most people to take along?
Yes, I am never without Vaseline, which is not necessarily emergency travel, but it's great for cuts and dry lips, but also topical steroids, for bug bites or sunburns. I kind of learned that the hard way on my honeymoon, that I have the most robust reaction to bugs and mosquitoes, so I've not been without a topical steroid since. So I just get welts all over my body, and I live in Oklahoma with the meanest mosquitoes. So I just think that's, when patients tell me that, I think, okay, yeah, I should, get you ready for the summer, so here's one just in case in your emergency.
Yeah, no, I think that a topical antibiotic for like cuts and scrapes is certainly reasonable. Band-Aids, just even something simple. It sort of depends on where you're going. If you're someplace that you can buy Band-Aids, it's one thing, but sometimes you're out in the middle of nowhere, and Band-Aids are very helpful. Then, the question sometimes is, oral antibiotics or not. And we oftentimes will take them just because sometimes, again, we're scuba divers, and as you get a cut or a scrape, there are a whole bunch of bacteria in seawater that can be pretty nasty. And so we don't always use it, obviously. And a guy, again, as a patient, you just have to have it from your physician. But it's not a bad idea to have. Yeah. Those are the sorts of things that we tend to bring.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think we're always with doxycycline or Cipro. My husband and I travel abroad often, and so you just never know. Like you could have one that one little crazy bug, especially you scuba diving. My husband's family scuba dives, and you just got to be careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so it's it's worth having along, and it doesn't take up much space, and if you have it, you feel better about it, and if you don't, it's like, why didn't I bring the whatever? And again, sometimes you can just go to a pharmacy down the road, but sometimes if you're really away from it all, it's a little bit tougher to get there. So that's worth doing.
No, I agree with you.
And what else? Are there other things that you recommend in terms of travel ready? We've talked about the fact that you want to be aware of what the temperature is like where you're going to be going, what the sun is going to be like, whether you're going to a place like Arizona or whether you're going to a place like Australia where, you're out of sea, it's their summertime right now when you fly down there. So it's a different environment that you have to plan for and dress for. So that's one thing. Little travel emergency kits. Are there other things that you recommend to patients if they're going to be doing traveling?
Yes, I can't believe how many patients I still have, and I have to teach them every time they come in that pre-tan before their summer beach vacations. And so I thought tanning beds were extinct, but they're not. So so I would say, number one, do not pre-tan. That, there's no such thing as a safe tan. You really are just aging your skin. It's pure UVA rays, which age the skin. You're better off, being so good with your sunscreen, finding maybe a spray tan that would offer you about SPF 7, but it's you need at least SPF 30 above. So I'm very specific with my patients. I give them a list of sunscreens, all of them different textures, all of them different colors, because I don't ever want them to say, oh, I didn't wear that sunscreen because I felt like a lifeguard because it was white on my skin, you know?
Right.
So I don't want to hear that excuse. I tell them, I'm kind of like your mom right now. But
but it's really true. I mean, you do feel like the police sometimes, but I mean, and again, it's not that, there's no such, I mean, look, when you're getting a tan, you're damaging your skin. And again, this is something that dermatologists know, but it's worth pointing out to people that, and especially, we were talking in the previous segment about doing laser treatments, which oftentimes is a nice thing to do in the wintertime, but oftentimes people are kind of they're getting their laser treatment, and then they're going off to Cabo San Lucas for a week, and it's just, you've got to say, okay, but you have got to be really, really good about the sun to get the maximal result from this. And if you're going to come back and have another treatment, if you have any tan, we really have to either not do it or compromise the treatment. So you've got to be really, really good. I mean, about staying out of the sun if you're going to be in a place that's going to be sunny.
Yeah, I did a laser fellowship, and my laser patients, I mean, I've learned how to weed it out a bit. I really have committed patients because I think I scare them. When I'm not just trying to, show them a laser procedure, but I show them, what can go wrong. I think that's the most important thing when you're trying to explain the procedure to patients. Like, look, you really do have to be out of the sun for 4 weeks,
Right.
None of this sitting by the window doing work, in your house. Like, that could be, even that sun coming through the window can really potentially ruin the results that we're trying to achieve, especially with the sun damage. So I would say I scare off more patients than I obtain, but I'd rather that and have really compliant patients, or know that they really just need to plan ahead next time.
Exactly right. Well, we have a call here from Julie in California. Julie, welcome to the program.
Yes, hi, doctor. I had a question, and I wanted to pick your brain about a supplement that I recently heard of called pycnogenol. It's a pine bark extract, and it's supposedly supposed to help improve hydration, elasticity, cell generation. Have you heard of it?
What's it called again?
Pycnophenol, Pycnogenol.
Pycnogenol, okay. I am not aware of it. Dr. Jordan, are you aware or do you have any experience with pycnogenol?
I definitely have probably seen it in products. I'm looking it up right now, and, is that the first one I'd reach for off the top of my head? No, but not to say it doesn't do that. Actually, the Dermatology Times has an article on how it improves skin aging signs, so I think it wouldn't hurt. I think there's supplements that wouldn't hurt for sure. It does say that it enhanced skin elasticity by 25% and skin hydration by 8%, and then reduced skin wrinkles by 3%. But I tell patients, I'm like, look, if you're going to take all these supplements and collagen supplements and extracts and what have you, if you're not using a sunscreen every day and getting in the habit of reapplying it, this is just money down the drain. So I'm big on that. But it sounds like you're pretty aware of skincare. So I would just preach that, and then all this is supplemental, and it definitely would not hurt.
Yeah, I mean the one that I take, I mean sort of in true honesty, is HelioCare, and
that's what I take too.
Yeah, okay, okay. And HelioCare is basically an antioxidant. It's a plant-based antioxidant, and it has an SPF of about 4, so it does give you some sun protection. So if I were going to recommend one, and I have absolutely no financial interest, either than I've been supporting them for years, the one that I would get is this one called HelioCare. The one that you're talking about, it looks, just quickly Googling it, doesn't look terrible, but I don't have any personal experience with it. But the one that I have used, and there is at least some decent evidence for it, is the HelioCare. So that's the one I've taken for years.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Julie, thank you very much for your call. Well, that's going to do it for us in this half hour. But I would like to thank Dr. Kimberly Jordan for joining us and sharing her expertise and her experience in terms of preparing herself and preparing her patients for travel, especially in this COVID era. So, Dr. Jordan, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dr. Whitlow.
We're going to take a break for a few minutes, but we're going to come back and we're going to be taking your phone calls. So please give us a call or stay on the line. Our number here is 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627.
Dr. Radio with the new SiriusXM app.
Dr. Radio.
Streaming now included with most SiriusXM subscriptions. Go to SiriusXM.com/more.
The push for the fantasy football playoffs is here, and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio has the information to help you win.
This is the week to start Denver's Javonte Williams.
16-10, 5 touchdowns. How about that? Because every decision is crucial and every point is precious, you need the best fantasy football analysts.
You don't want to be wrong, but you can't be afraid of being right.
Get winning advice right now on Fantasy Sports Radio, Channel 87, and the SXM app.
Friday at 2 p.m. East, Dr. Radio reports Coronavirus, what you need to know now. Tracking Omicron, Dr. Mark Siegel examines the latest on the new COVID-19 variant that has swept the headlines. Hear about the first case found in California, as well as the international picture. Plus, what impact is this new strain having on the mental health of an already pandemic-weary public? Dr. Radio reports Coronavirus, what you need to know now. Friday at 2 p.m. East, SiriusXM, Dr. Radio.
If you're a Springsteen fan, you just found the promised land. Hear rare interviews and performances. Live concerts.
Is there anybody alive out there?
Celebrity guest DJs.
This is Rob Lowe. Hey, baby, it's Little Steven here.
And more exclusives when listening to Bruce Springsteen's channel.
Welcome, Bruce Springsteen, to E Street Radio. You're home away from home. Great to be here.
E Street Radio, SiriusXM Channel 20.
This is an important message from the CDC about vaccines. People are considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after their second shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, and 2 weeks after the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Once fully vaccinated, you may visit inside a home or private setting without a mask with other fully vaccinated or low-risk people, travel domestically without a pre- or post-travel test, or having to quarantine after travel. For more information, please visit coronavirus.gov.
Next week on The Howard Stern Show.
Hey now.
A special holiday gift to our fans.
Really?
On Monday, Billie Eilish.
Wow.
Tuesday,
Yes?
Ben Affleck.
Yay!
And Wednesday, Neil Young.
This might be the best week ever. Oh, you got that right.
Then Thursday on Howard 101, Ed Sheeran's Small Stages Concert Special.
This is unbelievable.
All next week on the Howard Stern channels.
Yeah!
Coronavirus, what you need to know now.
Children do get long COVID. We have to be particularly careful about kids, and certainly kids 12 to 17 who can now be immunized. One more reason to encourage them and their parents to take advantage of that. Even if they're not as likely to get really seriously, acutely sick, they can still end up with this long-term consequence which can disrupt their school performance.
Hear the latest updates about COVID-19 on SiriusXM Dr. Radio.
Bringing you the information you need to stay safe and healthy during the coronavirus pandemic. SiriusXM Dr. Radio.
Welcome back to the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and as we listen to our friend Miles Davis fade out, we are coming into our last half hour of this evening's show. And it's all going to be about you and your skin problems and your skin questions. So please feel free to give me a call at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. We have a couple of emails here. One of them is from Anne in Connecticut. I have psoriasis. I received both doses of the Pfizer vaccine in February. I had swollen lymph node for 6 weeks after the second shot, but I'm fine now. My psoriasis has definitely flared up since the vaccines, unusual for moving into spring when it generally improves. Is it possible that the immune response has triggered the psoriasis? Regardless, I am pleased I got the vaccines, but wondering if there's a relationship. And the answer is absolutely, and there is a relationship. These vaccines, virtually all vaccines have the vaccine. It's something that you're trying to make the body respond to, whether it's the mumps and measles vaccine or the COVID-19 vaccine. But there are also things in there called adjuvants that not only sort of, you're putting in this foreign thing to make antibodies against and have a T cell response against and have this, broad immune response against this virus, but there are also things that non-specifically can stimulate the immune system. And so there are diseases, and psoriasis is one of them. And there are other ones too, like vasculitis and these other diseases that are sort of autoimmune, that your body is kind of reacting against itself, that these adjuvants will stimulate an immune response in a rather non-specific way. And I've seen flare-ups of vasculitis, I've seen flare-ups of psoriasis, I've seen flare-ups of eczema. And again, I think it's not a reason not to get the vaccine, because I think that, the vaccines are incredibly effective. In general, they're incredibly safe, and I think most people who have looked at this would say it's much, much safer, even if you have a flare-up of a systemic disease, to get the vaccine, because you're going to be protected. Now, having said that, there are people who have autoimmune diseases who are on big-time immunosuppressant drugs, and they can't go off of their immunosuppressant drugs. I mean, if you have psoriasis or something, you can go off for a week or two or something, but, if you have some of these vasculitis things like Wegener's granulomatosis, or, you have a heart transplant or a liver transplant, you can't go off of these medications. And so, you're vaccinated, and you will probably have some kind of response, but oftentimes not one that can be measured. And so you really can't, at least right now, get a real vaccine, and so you have to count on your neighbors, the rest of the people in your community, to get vaccinated, so that they don't get the virus, and because they don't get it, they can't transmit it to you. So when you're around somebody like that, and there are people like that just because of the medications they're on will not mount an immune response, they really count on the fact that everybody else around them gets vaccinated, so they can't get the virus. But it's an excellent question, and the answer to your question is, I think that it probably does play a role in the flare-up of your psoriasis. It doesn't do it for everybody, but I certainly have seen it with a number of these autoimmune type diseases, so it's real. But again, it's not a reason not to get the vaccine. Just be aware of it. You may need to treat the underlying disease a little more aggressively for a period of time, but it tends to be a blip that is temporary. It's not a permanent increase in the disease activity. So if you're out there, again, with a skin question, please give me a call. My number here is 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. We have another email here from Mike from Minnesota. Mike says, I'm 53, dealing with dry lip issues since my teenage years. Never smoked. My lips' skin layers get dry and peeling off every day. If I don't put on any lip balm, it gets even worse. Finding the right lip treatment is also a hassle. Over-the-counter products make it worse. As a result, my lips got thinner and showing some embarrassing discoloration. Any remedy for me, any cosmetic solution, or a dermatology treatment? Please let me know if you have the name of this disease or skin condition. Okay, so, you actually have... this irritation there of the lips. And there can be several reasons for it. There can be a number of reasons for it. One of them is just dry lips, which is very common. And oftentimes people will even inadvertently kind of lick their lips. And that's probably one of the most common causes of dryness of the lips. Again, people will do it inadvertently, not even realize it. And there again, just good moisturizers like Vaseline or Aquaphor can be useful. Having said that, sometimes people have an allergy. They're allergic to either something that they use as a toothpaste, something that they use as a mouthwash, something they might even be putting on the lips to try to help with the dryness. And there, it's probably worth seeing a dermatologist. If they think it is an allergy, they can, number one, treat the lips with a topical steroid. There are certain steroids that are relatively free of other ingredients. They have just Vaseline and the steroid in there. And the other thing they can do is what they call patch testing, where they can test you to see if anything in the products that you're using is causing this, because it may be something simple that you could just eliminate, a kind of toothpaste or a kind of mouthwash or something else that's coming into contact with the lips, because that's the other thing that can cause this. So I think it's worth a trip to the dermatologist to see what he or she thinks about it, and considering the possibility that you may actually have an allergy, and that patch testing may be able to elucidate something. And what they can do is, if they find out what you're allergic to, they can then generate a list of products, whether it's toothpaste or mouthwashes or something else, that don't have any of the things that you're allergic to. So this, I think, I would probably go to see a dermatologist about this, get a specific diagnosis. And again, I think there are certainly things that you can do, topical steroids that can be helpful. And again, patch testing can be useful in terms of eliminating or elucidating what you are allergic to. If you're allergic to something, then you can eliminate it from your product. So I hope that's helpful. We have a call here from Pam in Chicago. Pam, welcome to the program.
Yes, hi. I have a question about lipomas.
Okay.
I developed a lipoma about 20 years ago in back of my shoulder. I had it removed, and there's a scar there. But in the last couple of years, I've developed them on my arm, in the bicep area, in the back of my arm, my thigh. There's one in the back of my neck, and I have seen a dermatologist. And basically, it's remove it or try to afford these very expensive procedures that they're talking about. I am trying to find out another option for myself and a way to stop them from coming out, because they are literally getting bigger.
Yeah, I understand. Are they painful at all, or they're just there and you notice them?
One of them in the back of my arm, as I press on it, is a little bit painful. The others are just, I notice them because they're so large, and I'm wearing, a tank top or working out in the club. But there's only one or two that, when I press, painful. Otherwise, they're not.
Yeah. Okay. So lipoma is benign growth. It's an overgrowth of fat cells in the skin. It's not real common. You don't see it in everybody, but it's not that uncommon. And you can see people that have multiple lipomas. And the only reason I asked about the pain is that there's a kind of lipoma called an Angio Lipoma, which obviously has blood vessels in it, hence the angio with the lipoma. That can be painful. And sometimes the lipoma can be painful that if it impinges on a nerve, it gets to be big enough, it impinges on a nerve, that can be painful too. So they're benign lesions, so nothing really needs to be done. But in terms of treating them or preventing them, really the only treatment is to physically remove them. There's no cream that's going to go through the skin and dissolve them, and they really have to be removed physically, which just means, opening up the skin, cutting open an ellipse of skin, taking out the lipoma, and sewing it up again. And in terms of preventing it, there's really nothing that we know of in the year 2021 that prevents them from coming. So I think that...
Go
ahead.
No, so would a dermatologist... my dermatologist said that she could remove them. I'm thinking, would a general surgeon best to remove them? A plastic surgeon?
I think
I wasn't sure what to think.
But this is the kind of thing that dermatologists do. I certainly cut out lipomas. It's you just go in there and you essentially remove that fatty tissue. It actually has when you're in there looking at it, the lobules of fat are actually slightly larger than the normal fat, so you can kind of get a sense of where the lipoma is. That is the issue, is that sometimes you leave a little bit of it behind and it can come back. And so, but I don't know that a general surgeon or a plastic surgeon be better at it. I mean, this is a pretty straightforward procedure in the sense that you just, make an ellipse of skin. You cut out an ellipse. You remove all you can find there. Again, it has a little bit different texture of the lipoma compared to the fatty tissue that's around it, because that's the layer it's really in, is that fatty tissue. And then you sew it up again. The stitches stay in for a period of 1 or 2 weeks, and then they come out. So, yeah, I think a dermatologist, I certainly have done them over the years. I think a dermatologist is quite capable of doing it. But having said that, general surgeons and plastic surgeons are capable of doing it too. But, it's the kind of thing that I think a dermatologist is well within their training and their expertise to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am planning on seeing my dermatologist just for something else, so I'll talk to her about it. She mentioned to me there was another treatment called Kybella, or the liposuction, and, not covered by insurance or anything.
Yeah, so, Kybella is actually, FDA approved for sort of fat underneath the chin, that sort of that neck fat. And it's a detergent, basically. You put it in there, you inject it in there, and it kind of dissolves the fat. I have not used it for lipomas, but that's what it does under the neck fat there, is dissolve it. I haven't used it, so I really can't comment on how effective it would be. I mean, theoretically, it could make a difference. It gets pretty inflamed. That's the thing to be aware of. It gets kind of red and inflamed. But I don't know enough about it in terms of long-term results, how it does relative to the surgery in terms of getting rid of the lipoma. I mean, the traditional, and liposuction, again, I think it's hard to know when you do that you've gotten it all out, because part of what tells you you've gotten the lipoma out is that difference in the texture of the fat when you actually cut it out. But again, I mean, theoretically, at least temporarily, the liposuction should be able to remove it. Again, I have not used that. I've just done the more traditional method of cutting it out and then sewing the skin back together.
And I think I'll probably end up doing that. I just want them removed.
Yeah, no, I understand.
They keep coming, they're just coming, and I'm not a big person to begin with, so they're very noticeable.
No, I understand. I get it, but I think the sort of the tried and true method for getting rid of them in the year 2021 still is surgical removal.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, Pam, listen, good luck. This is the Dermatology Show here on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and if you are out there with a skin question, please give us a call. Our number here is 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. And we have a call here from Lori right here in New Jersey. Lori, welcome to the program.
Hi, doctor. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
I have a strange situation. I'm 29. I had the Moderna booster. 11 days after I got my shot, I broke out into a rash, front and back, chest, back, stomach. It looked as though I had a sunburn.
Mm-hmm.
It was also the same day that I wore a brand new sweater that I had never worn before. It's now about 2.5 weeks later. I still have a rash. It's certainly not as severe, but it moves.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll have a rash on my back for 20 minutes. Then it goes away and it goes to my arm. Then it goes away and then it goes to my face. It's itchy at times, not other times. And if I scratch, it makes like a line on my skin.
Mm-hmm.
I have no clue what. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I certainly have seen this especially early on in the vaccinations. I haven't seen it in a few months now, but early on when people got both the Moderna as well as the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, I saw people who came in, and it would be not right after the vaccine, but a week, 2 weeks after they got the vaccine, and they would get this very itchy rash that would move around. It would start one place and then move someplace else, so I did see it. I usually just treated it with a topical steroid. I used something like a mid-potency prescription topical steroid. The one that I normally used for this was something called triamcinolone acetonide, which is certainly significantly stronger than the hydrocortisone that you can get over the counter, but generally had good success with that. And then it eventually goes away on its own. I mean, presumably it is, these vaccines are sort of stimulating your immune system. And as I talked about with one of the earlier emails, people that have these kind of autoimmune type diseases can get a flare-up of them because these vaccines have these, not only the specific antigen that you're trying to develop immunity to, like the spike protein in COVID, but also these things called adjuvants that sort of stimulate the body's immune system in a more non-specific way, and can lead to these kind of a flare-up. So it's nothing to worry about. It's nothing that's dangerous. I certainly have seen it, I think the thing to do is you can see a dermatologist. Oftentimes these mid-potency topical steroids can be effective, and just realize that it will go away. Now the issue you raise is you have this sweater. Could this be a contact dermatitis? Yeah, maybe. But I think that the money is on the vaccine, and again, it's not a reason not to get the vaccine. Just realizes this is kind of it's almost a sense that your body's kind of getting stimulated, your immune system is getting stimulated, but it's just kind of doing it in a somewhat haywire way. But it doesn't interfere with the effectiveness of the vaccine at all.
Okay, and does it mean that I'm going to have rashes on and off any other time I may get the vaccine? Because I had 2 vaccines before this, never had a rash.
Yeah, no, I must say, when I saw it, it was idiosyncratic. So it wasn't like each time the person got it, they had the rash. So I think, again, like so many things with COVID, we're kind of learning about this in real time. And so, it may be that in 2 or 3 years we'll say, this is when you're going to have the rash. But we really don't know right now. But it doesn't, I would say it does not mean that you're going to get it again. It's possible, I guess, that you may, but I must say I have not seen that in my practice. So I would say it's probably somewhat random, as they say. Just treat it symptomatically with a topical steroid, and that should be, I think it'll go away.
How long should it take to go away? Because it really is unsightly when it's on my face. Especially.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, when I've seen patients with it, it's a couple of weeks. But again, your results may vary. I haven't seen a ton of cases, so I'm no expert, but it's a couple of weeks, in my experience.
Right, and the fact that it literally, the first day that I had it, when I was wearing this new sweater, it was literally exactly where the sweater sat on my skin. You just thinking that it's more likely to be the booster.
Yeah, I still think so. I think that's where the money is on this one.
Okay, and so now I'm going on like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's not crazy at all. And I think the thing to do, I would see a dermatologist because they can give you creams that will definitely make it less red and less irritated.
Okay, but it's not going to really stop the length.
Well, it'll control the symptoms. I mean, again, this has to run its course of your body's immune system stimulating whatever it was. So the main thing to do is to make it so it's less uncomfortable and not as visible.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Very, very good. Thanks so much.
All right, Lori, thank you very much for your call. This is the Dermatology Show on Dr. Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow, and if you are out there with a skin question, please give me a call. Our number here is 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. And we have a call here from Michelle in Georgia. Michelle, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Hi there. What can we do for you today, Michelle?
I was calling about hyperpigmentation.
Okay.
Is there any? I know there's some topical creams and I don't know how
hydroquinone.
Yeah, and I don't know what percentage is safe, and are they effective, and do they really work?
Okay. Do you know why you're having hyperpigmentation? Is it both lips, upper lip, lower lip?
Oh, it's even if I get like acne or something, and I just have hyperpigmentation overall. It's just my lip area is the most noticeable.
Is it on the lips or above the lips or below the lips?
Oh, it's like above, not in the, it's in the beginning part of my lips, not in the inner part of my lips.
Not in the inner part of the lips. Okay. So and you have dark skin?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Not super dark, but
you've got some pigment in there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So hyperpigmentation is, the residual pigment. It's oftentimes called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, and what that means is, especially people that have color in their skin, they can have an acne lesion or they can have something else, and when the lesion goes away, they're left with pigment that's there, and it's very difficult to treat. We don't have great treatments for it. The most important thing to do, the number one thing to do, is a good broad spectrum sunscreen every day, because our treatments are minimally effective, and the sun is horrible for undoing any good that we do. So, I would say the most important thing is good sunscreen every day. Now, having said that, then these hydroquinone products, they can be effective. They're not great, but they can be effective. There's one that is the prescription strength is called Triluma, Triluma, which is a combination of a hydroquinone plus a retin-A type drugs, and the retin-A will cause some easing of the pigmentation. It also thins that outermost layer of the skin a bit, so it allows the hydroquinone to penetrate a little bit better, and then it has a steroid in there to counteract the irritating effects of the retin-A. And you put that on once a day with good sunscreen, and that is a reasonable thing to try. I mean, that's going to be about as good as you can do. Now, you go to the dermatologist, and they can have these compounded formulas where they essentially will give you a higher concentration of the hydroquinone and things like that. They can be expensive. The Triluma is not cheap, but I mean, in general, that's the one to do. But that is a prescription drug. So, again, the most important thing you can do is a good sunscreen every day. And then after that, I think you could try a hydroquinone. I think you're probably going to be better off going to a dermatologist, getting a prescription for this Triluma, and just put that on once a day, and then give that a few months. People have tried lasers for it. Lasers are variably effective. Sometimes they make it better, sometimes they make it worse. They're not a home run. And so I think in general you're probably better off going with the sunscreen as well as some kind of a bleaching cream.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, very good. Thank you very much for your call. Let's see if we have time for one more quick call. We have a call from Paula in North Carolina. Paula, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. I am a stage 4 lung cancer patient, and I take a TKI by the name of Tagrisso.
Okay.
One of the major side effects is dry skin. It dries my nails out, and it causes splits in the ends of my fingertips. They come randomly.
Got it. Okay, so Paula, listen, we're short on time. So what I'm going to say is the following. I think for something like this, you're probably better off. You can talk to your oncologist or a dermatologist. I would use a potent topical steroid. The one that I would use would be an ointment, and something that's a very potent one like clobetasol or one of the really potent topical steroids, and you can ask them about it. You put that on there twice a day, and oftentimes this is very effective in terms of helping with this. Now, obviously, you're climbing a high mountain trying to undo the chemotherapy, but I would do a potent topical steroid. In any case, that's going to do it for us. I'm going to sign off for the evening, but it's been a pleasure being with all of you. Thank you for joining the Dermatology Show. Please join us again next week. I'm Dr. Michael Whitlow.
Experience Sirius XM
SiriusXM's coverage of the 122nd Army-Navy game on ESPNU Radio Channel 84 and the SXM app. It all begins tomorrow with on-site coverage aboard the USS Intrepid.
These guys are going to be protecting our kids or grandkids.
Game day coverage from MetLife Stadium starts Saturday at 9 Eastern. Then at 3, hear all the action as the cadets from Army take on the Navy midshipmen. Only on ESPNU Radio Channel 84.
Friday on Dr. Radio at 6 a.m. East. Can repetitive hits to the head cause stroke? Dr. Todd Berland looks at a new NFL-funded study that suggests a link between multiple concussions and stroke. At 8 a.m., Dr. Shankin and Evans discuss early childhood sleep and how that impacts child development. Then at noon East, registered dietitian Samantha Heller examines the science of food preparation. Learn how physics, biology, and chemistry affect what we eat and how we make it. That's just some of what's happening Friday on SiriusXM Dr. Radio.
Sit back, let go, and slip into a commercial-free stream of deep house and down-tempo grooves. SiriusXM, chill. Modern mood music for focus, relaxation, and inspiration. SiriusXM, chill, channel 53, or download the SiriusXM app to listen outside of the car.
I'm Dr. Frank Adams with some important suggestions to keep you safe this allergy season. First, make sure you have a rescue inhaler in case of an asthma attack, and make sure that it's not expired. Check the expiration date. How many sprays do you have left in your inhaler? Put an extra inhaler in your child's school backpack. Talk to your school officials. Make sure they have a contingency plan in case of an emergency asthma attack. And always remember to breathe easy. Stay healthy with Dr. Rita.
You know her name. 15-time Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, producer, actress.
Yes, Sean, this is Alicia Keys.
Alicia Keys Radio comes to SiriusXM. Her soul-stirring R&B hits. Her exclusive SiriusXM Small Stage Series performance at Harlem's world-famous Apollo Theater. And much more. Alicia Keys Radio. For a limited time starting tomorrow on Channel 48 and through January 6th on the SXM app.
Coronavirus. What you need to know now.
The big effort now has got to help people understand that a failure to vaccinate anywhere in the world is a failure to vaccinate everywhere. We've got to have a global approach to vaccination, and protecting ourselves nationally is very important, but contributing to an international effort to vaccinate is also extremely important here when you're dealing with a pandemic.
Hear the latest updates about COVID-19 on SiriusXM Dr. Radio.
Get facts, not fear. Dr. Radio brings you everything you need to know about the coronavirus pandemic. SiriusXM 110.
This is SiriusXM Dr. Radio.
And now from the heart of the NYU Langone Medical Center, a Dr. Radio special, Chiefs Rounds. Here's the Vice Chair for Clinical Affairs, Dr. Mark Pochapin.
Dr. Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Chiefs Rounds. I'm Mark Pochapin, your host. I'm so glad to be here because we have so many important things to talk about. I have some great guests to talk to with you. I'm Dr. Mark Pochapin. I'm the Division Chief of Gastroenterology and Hepatology and Vice Chair of Clinical Affairs for the Department of Medicine. And as your host, I just love being in the studio. And today, here with my two guests in person, of course, we're masked and we're distanced, but we're here together to talk to you about such an important topic, mainly about overweight, obesity, and lifestyle, medical, and endoscopic, and even surgical interventions. But obesity is really another epidemic in our country, not one that you can catch from one another, but one that is as prevalent as almost 50% of the population. I mean, I was going through the numbers, and I'm just shocked. 42.4% is the most recent number of obesity that I have, and that's from 2018. So I would not be surprised if we're closing in on 50%. Anyway, let me tell you about the show. Chiefs Rounds, I take people who run programs, people who are really experts in a field, and I get a chance to talk to them. And not only do I get information for all of you to learn, but I learn a lot as well, and that's why I love doing it. I can be reached at my Twitter at Mark Pochapin. My Instagram is at Mark Pochapin MD. And it's really important that we stay connected. Social media is a nice way to do it. Dr. Radio's Twitter is at NYU Docs. And we have to recognize that obesity is not just about eating too much food. That is really an oversimplification that is just not true. There are a lot of things that are going on. It's the type of food you eat, it's the amount of activity and exercise. It's also about your metabolism. So there are a lot of things that are going on, and this is not just about us eating. Now, of course, eating the wrong foods and eating too much is part of it, and that's something that we have to be very careful about during this holiday season. But I think you're going to learn a lot that there are things we can do to help combat obesity, and most importantly, that we can take ownership of this problem, not just throw our hands up and say there's nothing we can do. So let me introduce my guests. My first guest is Dr. Holly Lofton. She is a clinical associate professor of medicine and surgery here at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. She's really a specialist in obesity medicine. She works with our bariatrics team, but she herself is focused on the medical aspect and nutrition. And it's really wonderful to have a medical physician who really understands nutrition, because Holly, unfortunately, it's kind of a rare combination. You know, most of us are trained very well in our specialties and subspecialties, but nutrition is just not one of the strong points, and unfortunately, not the strongest area of medical education, at least when we were training. I know it's getting better, but Holly, welcome. It's always great to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I also love your Instagram, at SkinnyDocMD, with a little underscore MD. That's great. I'm not surprised that you have a fun Twitter handle. My next guest is Dr. Violetta Popov. She is a gastroenterologist within my division, someone who I've always enjoyed working with, a wonderful researcher, a wonderful clinician, and a wonderful communicator and teacher, so it's great to have her here. She's an assistant professor of medicine here at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. She's the director of our bariatric endoscopy center within the NYU VA Health and Harbor System, and her Twitter is at Papa Violetta. So not quite as as unique and as creative as Dr. Lofton, but kind of like myself, just using your name. If you want to reach us, this is a live show. If you have questions about obesity and what you can do, you can reach us at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. We are here to answer your questions, and it's so great to have all of you. Holly, I started off by this crazy statistic, over 40%, probably closer to 50%. Is there a more recent statistic? And what the heck? How could we say that we have an epidemic of something that involves almost half of our population?
Yes, I have the statistics in my head from a presentation I gave earlier today. So it does vary a lot by ethnicity and race, so I'll break it down. This is as of June 2020. 49.8% of non-Hispanic blacks in America have obesity. I'm not talking about overweight and obesity as a disease.
Wait, could you repeat that again? 49.8. So basically 50%, basically half, have obesity, where we're talking about BMI over
30. Over 30.
That is shocking.
Yes.
And disturbing, horribly disturbing.
Yes, and I'm thinking also we took that statistic from, it's self-reported data, so it could be higher. You know, if you ask someone your weight, they tend to go the last weight, maybe that was months ago.
If anything, that's an understatement then.
And that was also in June 2020. If we think of the situation the world was in June 2020, and now we're over a year later, I'm really not looking forward to what the results might be for June 2022, and even right now. Now, if we're looking at non-Hispanic whites, we were looking at closer to 40%, which is still pretty high. Our Hispanic population is about 44%, and Asian population 14%. So there are differences within the ethnicities, but still these rates are alarming.
Incredibly alarming. And also the fact that there are these disparities. I think what we've been seeing with COVID, we've always known this to be true in certain disease states, like one of the areas that Violetta and I work closely with is colon cancer prevention. We know that there's a higher incidence and mortality in black Americans versus white Americans in colorectal cancer, and we've been focusing on the why. And we've always been looking for something programmed genetically, but there's this concept of the social determinants that might be playing a role. And I can't imagine a more interesting area to study than weight, because food that we eat is socially determined. What is in the place that you go to get your food, what you can afford, is partly about the culture and the environment, not about the genes. In fact, I've heard that in certain situations, and I suspect in this as well, that your zip code may actually be more important than your genetic code. Holly, can you comment on that a little bit, in that disparity that you mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. We see patients with different ethnicities, and we can boil that down to genetics by even looking at twin studies to get to the very nitty-gritty of genes. So we look at twins, and they tend to be, even when raised in separate environments, similar heights and weights. For identical twins, you look at fraternal twins, different height and weight. So even being in the similar womb environment, but not the same womb, can change your height and weight. Now, if we look at patients, let's say, who are raised in another country and they have a certain BMI, and we bring them to America, within months they tend to start gaining weight. I see that a lot in the clinic, and it's not only how your genes affect your weight, but how the environment, the food intake, and maybe certain ingredients in food affect your genes. So we know environmental factors such as air quality, certain food additives can turn on or off certain genes that were previously protecting you against weight gain. So this still stands to be elucidated with some research where we're finding that this epigenetic factor, how our environment affects our genes, is something that can be really important in one's overall weight and health too.
Now, Violetta, you and I are gastroenterologists, and I'm sure you, like me, did not learn much about nutrition and weight, even though all of the nutrients get absorbed through the gastrointestinal tract. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing. I know you're dealing with a different aspect. You're looking at how we can do things endoscopically to help improve things. But tell me, even before that, what are some of the complications that you see because of people being overweight and obese?
Well, the complications of obesity are myriad, and we are all aware of some of these, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea. But there are so many gastrointestinal complications or comorbid conditions associated with obesity. We can start with gallbladder disease, gastroesophageal reflux, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which originally sparked my interest in obesity management. Actually, the first study I did was looking at disparities in liver transplantation outcomes in patients with NAFLD, and specifically on the effect of the zip code on outcomes.
Wow, I did not know that. Okay.
That was many years ago.
Well, you may have invented the field then.
No, not really. But yes, it was close to invention. Let's just leave it at that. And but more alarmingly in recent years, and Mark, this is something that you have seen, and you are working, this is where your focus is, this is the increase in colorectal cancer that we see in younger patients, something that has actually prompted change of the screening guidelines for colorectal cancer, screening age starting at age 45 rather than age 50, just because we have seen an alarming increase in colorectal cancer in younger patients, and quite a few studies have shown an association with increased weight.
Yeah.
The association between weight and some of those comorbid conditions is so strong that even every pound of increase in weight is associated with increase in the risk of diabetes or high blood pressure.
Yeah, it is incredible. I mean, it is something that affects literally every part of the body. Violetta talking about some of the gastrointestinal manifestations. Holly, what do you see as some of the most difficult components medically of people who are obese? And what's the way to start getting, to tackle this thing? How do we handle something that seems to be so ingrained in our culture and our environment?
Well, I think the first step that we take in the medical environment is that we try to diagnose the weight condition. Is this overweight? Is this obesity? And then once we determine if those are present, we start to look at labs and sonograms, other imaging tests to determine if there's any manifestation of disease due to this obesity. So some of the definitions of the medical society of obesity are an accumulation of fat that may impair health, and that impairment may come from the inflammation because of the fat. So say inflammatory cytokines making it difficult for someone to properly metabolize glucose, and that causes diabetes. But then we also have just the sheer mass of fat. So if someone has a lot of fat on their abdomen, I see this very commonly, they start to have reflux. And we lose even 10 pounds, the reflux goes away. They have decreased need for medications. So really diagnosing the condition and any underlying medical conditions, while it can be initially upsetting for the patient to go through all of these tests, we need to really assess health, because our goals are health-based, not weight-based. While we want to get a normal BMI, we want the patient to be healthy and happy, as I like to say.
That's true. And I know you have a lot of ways of trying to counsel people on how to eat. that's not radical, that fits with their lifestyle, that actually sounds pretty reasonable. Every time I leave here, I always get hopeful that actually this is something doable. And I've used some of your suggestions. As I said, I learn a lot from this show. Being host of the show, I meet some wonderful people, and Holly, you've been on a number of times. So I want to remind everybody, if you're struggling with weight, if you are overweight or have obesity, give us a call. Two wonderful experts here with me in the studio. We'd love to answer your questions. We're at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. I'm here with Dr. Violetta Popov and Dr. Holly Lofton. I'm Mark Pochapin. We're here to help. So, Holly, if someone comes to you, you work in the bariatric center, and so you're often one of the first stops that people come to. They have a BMI, let's say, at 28. They're not obese in the sense that they have over 30, but they're overweight, and they say to you, I want to lose weight. What do you do? And then, obviously what everybody's looking for is the magic pill. Here, just take this, but that's not the way it works.
So this type of patient, I would lay out what the options are. Say, yes, your diagnosis is overweight, and if there are any related medical conditions, and that person's options would be lifestyle intervention, which everyone has as an option. Even if you're normal weight, prevention of obesity involves lifestyle. That's diet, exercise, behaviors. So lifestyle options, as well as this patient would be a candidate for medications for weight management. And we go through which would be safe for that patient, which would be the most efficacious, give them the most benefit, and then we do look into the cost, because that's usually the highest obstacle we have, is getting some of the insurances to cover these medications, even though we know they're safe for patients with weight issues.
Right. Now, Violetta, you see patients who are not quite ready for surgery and may need an endoscopic intervention. Tell us a little bit about that, because I don't think people really understand what can be done by a gastroenterologist who specializes in bariatric endoscopy.
Thank you. That's a great question. Well, when we speak these days about bariatric endoscopy, or we even call it bariatric and metabolic endoscopy, we mean procedures that are minimally invasive compared to surgery. In other words, these are procedures that will not involve their same-day procedure. Our patients usually do not stay overnight in the hospital. After the procedure, the patient just can go home and over the next few days resume their normal activities. And also, these are procedures that do not involve a cut or stitch of the skin. We just use the regular gastroenterological ways to reach your insides, which is through the mouth into your stomach. And this is how we treat bleeding gastric ulcers, how we diagnose gastroesophageal reflux or treat Barrett's esophagus. So using an upper endoscopy, we can perform different interventions, such as placement of a gastric balloon. The balloon is technically a balloon that's made of silicone.
It's actually so simple, right? It's a balloon that fills the stomach and makes you feel full, and there's not that much space. It makes a lot of sense. I know there's some issues with it, but it seems to be working at least to get someone temporized, or at least to get them start the process.
Exactly. That's how I see it. The balloon is wonderful for patients who need to jumpstart that weight loss. Sometimes our patients need that in order to be able to exercise, and I cannot stress how important it is to actually use the balloon as a behavioral altering tool rather than just as a weight loss tool, because the balloon does help us adjust how much we are able to eat. The patients can eat only a certain amount with the gastric balloon. It's very difficult to overeat. The balloon stays in for 6 months, or now with the new balloon maybe up to 8 months, and then after that it is removed. Again, with an upper endoscopy, basically we go in, we puncture, we suction all the fluid. It's about 600 ml, or 1.5 pounds of fluid that stays in that balloon, and then we take it out. The balloon works by creating a feeling of fullness and satiety. And in fact, any food that we eat tends to stay longer in the stomach with the balloon. And that gives an opportunity for the patient to adjust their intake. And they quickly lose 15-20 pounds, and then the rest of the weight loss depends on exactly how much they're going to eat. But most patients lose a significant amount of weight. The biggest issue, though, comes when the balloon comes out. Right. How are we going to maintain that weight loss? And that's when I send the patients to Holly to help me out, or to my colleague, Dr. Jose Aleman at the Manhattan VA. We work very closely together. We share patients, and we actually have shown that patients who get the gastric balloon or another procedure called endoscopic gastroplasty versus patients who get just pharmacotherapy versus the patients who get a combination of these therapies. The patients who get the combination therapy actually do much, much better long term. And I'm not talking 6 months, 12 months. I'm talking 24 months or over. Patients who maintain their weight loss and actually build on over time.
Right, and it's so important, as you say, that we work together. Holly, these patients are patients who've had a discussion with you, whether it's going to be a balloon or surgery or medical. How do you decide which patient gets what treatment, and how do you work with your colleagues in that regard?
So a lot of times our hands are tied when we look at the cost of certain procedures. A lot of the balloon procedures patients pay out of pocket for, and they're really in a situation where they're able to do that, and that's great. A lot of our medications are also pretty expensive, so we really look to what is covered on the patient's insurance, and then we look to see if that patient will be able to tolerate any potential side effects and whether it's safe for them. So when I look for a medication, I want to try to hit many angles. If you have a blood pressure issue and a weight issue, why don't I find a med that's going to lower both your weight and your blood pressure so we can get the best result for you? And we've actually done a study here in my clinic in combination with our bariatric surgeons who do the balloon, and looked at patients who had the combination of pharmacotherapy with the balloon, and we found that those patients did actually do much better longer term, as did Dr. Popov here. And working together to really treat weight as a long-term condition is very important, because the patient will change over time, whether their environment changes or their age gets higher. You need a new plan every so often to generate more results. It
sounds like we really need better insurance coverage of that balloon. Violetta, you work at our Manhattan VA, so is it covered in the VA?
Yes, the VA has been really thinking forward in that respect, and I'm very proud to say that our veterans can get bariatric endoscopic procedures covered by our VA.
Yeah, I wish everyone would have at least the opportunity. It doesn't mean that it's right for everybody, but if it was covered by insurance, I think a lot more people would have at least that as an option. And like you said, as a combination, it might be something that can actually work quite well with medical intervention as well. Well, let's go to the phones now. We're going to head first to Indiana, and we're going to speak to Kathy. Kathy, welcome to Dr. Radio. Welcome to Chiefs Rounds, and what question do you have for us?
I have a question. I am the BMI of like 40, and I tried several diets, but I went to a chiropractor recently, and I have thyroid problems, but they discontinued like the Armour thyroid, the natural one I was taking, and then they brought it back, but it was like quadruple in price. So he told me that I should be doing the starch diet. And I couldn't find much on the internet about it. Have you heard much about that?
Holly, I don't think I've ever heard of a starch diet. I would think I would hear of an anti-starch diet.
Kathy, I want to hear exactly what this provider means by the starch diet. It could be avoiding starch. It could be...
Maybe it's a starch avoidance diet.
Well, Dr. McDougall wrote a book about it, and he said it's really good for like the thyroid, this chiropractor told me. And he said that with you eat fruits and vegetables, almost like a plant-based diet all day, and but with that, you have to eat either potato, hominy, or white rice with every meal.
Well, I can comment on that. Thanks for the specifics, Kathy. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
As I mentioned earlier, let's say we're thinking about a medication or Dr. Popov is thinking about a procedure. We want the treatment that's going to target the majority of the patient's other medical conditions. So when we're thinking about something to help our thyroid, you also want to make sure it's going to be beneficial to weight. And what I hear from this diet is that it may be lacking in protein, which will cause the body to possibly become more insulin resistant and actually propagate fat gain and lead to weight gain. So while I have not seen evidence on this improving thyroid function in the absence of medication, my concern is that it might cause weight gain for you. So you'd want to follow this under very strict guidance. There also should be some recommendations regarding the calorie intake and what the activity will be if you decide to pursue something like this.
That seems a lot. That makes sense. So Kathy, what you're saying is that there is actually two conditions. I mean, one is the thyroid, but the other is just the overall weight.
Yes, and the overall weight comes on when, of course, I know they said when you take thyroid medicine, you have to take it forever. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, for patients who have low thyroid, generally you're replacing the thyroid hormones. So that would make sense, yeah. But it sounds like you're at least thinking about it. And I always say that it's so important to reach out to people who are really trained dietitians or nutritionists. When you have questions like this, there are a lot of these experts in every medical facility, and I think they're underutilized, especially questions like this where perhaps you're doing something for your thyroid, but you may get in trouble with your overall weight. So it's something that's important. Kathy, obviously you're thinking about it and calling Dr. Radio. We love having these type of questions, but I think for everybody out there, don't be afraid to reach out to your dietitian or nutritionist. Holly, how do you find the right person who can help you with these questions? Because there is a lot of misinformation, and there are a lot of people who say things that perhaps may not have the right training.
I think it's important to look for someone that you get along with from a personality standpoint, because a registered dietitian has training, education, and background. So they essentially should all be able to treat the conditions that you are approaching them with, but you'll have a close relationship with this person. You want to make sure they're available for you when you need them, and that they have some familiarity with your condition. So, for example, we have some dietitians that are really specialized in GI-related disorders, such as inflammatory bowel disease, but may not have the specifics and training for weight management. So once someone has a registered dietitian degree, they then go on to get other certifications in specialties. So we have weight management dietitians, we have dietitians for diabetes, cardiovascular, and you want to make sure they have experience in your particular disease state and it can work with your goals.
Yeah, makes sense. And is there a place online where people can go to find the right type of dietitian in their area, or perhaps even interact online with someone who is a registered dietitian?
There's a Nutrition and Dietetics Association. It's AND as the acronym, and they have a database that you can find someone locally.
You can eat this and that.
Yes.
Okay. I want to go back to the phones now. We're going to head to Delaware. We're going to speak to John. Again, if you have questions about obesity, give us a call at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. John, welcome to Chiefs Rounds. You should be on the air.
Hi. I've been on keto, K-E-T-O diet since the beginning of the year, and I lost 25 pounds pretty quickly, and I'm down to about normal weight. I don't think I'm obese. However, I've recently been diagnosed with Barrett's esophagus, and it's high-grade dysplasia. They said it almost turned into cancer, and in fact, there was some cell change. Could it be related to my ketogenic diet, and is there a specific diet that you would recommend for Barrett's esophagus?
Okay, a lot to unwrap here, and given that you have two gastroenterologists and a obesity specialist, you got the right people around the table here. So I'm going to start first with Dr. Popov. Could you just tell us what Barrett's esophagus is, what high-grade dysplasia is, and then we're going to move Holly to you to talk about the keto diet and what he can do going forward. Violetta?
Hi, John. Thank you for calling and for your question. As you're aware, Barrett's esophagus is a condition that is associated with long-standing gastroesophageal reflux that leads to, in a few patients, it can lead to atypical changes in the lining of the esophagus. Usually, Barrett's esophagus can be associated with obesity, and I agree with you, you did the right thing by losing weight. There are quite a few treatment options for Barrett's esophagus, and quite a few of these are actually non-surgical and performed by gastroenterologists in your area. I hope you were referred to one already. And also you are planning to undergo regular surveillance to make sure that this high-grade dysplasia does not